welcome to the Rob Bro Show. I am Rob Bro. He's Carson Robinson. I am the host. You are the co-host. You can go today by commenting on the Starting Line chat line. The Starting Line chat line brought to you by Starting Line Counseling. Get a free 15-minute consultation with Chase today. StartingLineCounseling.com. He's a two-time Texas Tech graduate. Been in the business for over a decade now. Has started his own firm. Consultation firm. He's a good guy. If you need help, he can certainly at least hook you up with somebody to help you if he's not doing it himself. All right. We're also in the Diversified Lenders studio. It's a big day for us, Carson. Texas lost the national championship. I'm just kidding. I look, last night I thought I was going to be, or whenever it was, 3 nights ago, I thought I was going to be like super hater. Didn't like huge Washington fan. I was pulling for Texas at points. I don't know what they're going to the SEC. I don't care. It's not a huge deal to me. I was not the mega hater that some Texas Tech fans were. If you were that, good for you. I don't care. But it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But they lost. Washington tried to give it to them at the end. But Texas and Quinn Ewers couldn't pull it out there with the final throw.
Yeah. I was a Washington fan the whole time.
Yeah.
I can't bring myself to root for the University of Texas. I don't care where it is.
Was leaning Washington, but there were some times. I was like, oh, let's just make this a game, Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I was happy for Texas when they went down and scored and made it look respectable, and then Washington got the onside kick, and then everything was hunky-dory in my book until Washington ended up just not knowing how to run a clock out.
No.
Like, Kalen DeBoer, that might have been, if it would have happened and Texas would have scored there at the end of the game, that probably would have been the biggest collapse in college football history, reminiscent of in the NFL when the Atlanta Falcons had that big lead at halftime and then came back and lost to the New England Patriots. That, in my mind, is the greatest collapse in the NFL history of a big-time game that matters. Other than the obviously the fumble in the end zone, the Cowboys were going to win a world championship, and that didn't happen. But yeah, that was going to be really embarrassing for Kalen DeBoer and Washington. And you say that. I saw a lot of people on Twitter and the things, or X, whatever it is, saying that the clock would have ran out. Texas wouldn't have had a shot if he doesn't get hurt right there. Well, just kneel the ball, man. Or don't throw it on third down on the previous drive before you kick a field goal and run it. They have to spend another one of their timeouts. They had 2 left. You left them with 2 left because you threw an incomplete pass, and then you kicked the field goal, which left a ton more time on the clock. You run the ball right there. If you get a first down, great. If you don't, the field goal makes it a 2-score game. That's all you need at that point. You need it to be a 2-score game, but you need to eliminate their timeout. Washington played that the absolute worst you could possibly play that, and came away with a just tail between their legs win. That's what it looked like. They did everything in their power. They did everything in their power for Texas to come back and win that football game, and somehow made a great play at the end. What a play at the end of the game by that defensive back.
Yeah.
There at the end of the game, because when Quinn Ewers threw that football in the end zone, I'm thinking, oh, here it comes. Adonai Mitchell's coming down with another one, and Texas is going to win and go to the national championship, probably win a national championship. So if Texas would have won that game, they would have won the national championship. I'm just saying.
Probably so. I certainly think Washington and Michigan's a good matchup. Speaking of,
I love it.
Michigan beating Alabama. When Michigan went, or they threw the interception on the first play of the game, second play of the game.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's over. They're gonna lose by 40. And then the interception got overturned.
Yeah.
And I think they still went 3 and out. And I was like, okay, this is just not gonna go well. And then Michigan had 3 sacks, I think, and then they muffed the punt. And I was like, all right, here goes Alabama. Alabama's gonna kill them. And then Michigan scores on the next drive after that. So Michigan just stayed with them. I was not thinking they were going to do well the entire game, and then they just stuck with them. came back, and then in the end beat them in overtime. How cool would it have been to have 2 overtime playoff games? That would have been awesome. I thought we were going to the end. But this now, if the national championships close, this is the best 3-game set of playoff games we've had in a playoff because there's always been a blowout.
Yeah,
every year there seems to have been a blowout, either in one of the championship games or the championship game, one of the playoff games or one of the championships. So I think this is a really good matchup, and I just hope it's a really good game coming up. What was it, next Monday?
Yeah, next Monday in Houston. Yeah, and obviously you want for me as a college football fan, you kind of wanted this matchup because you felt like these were the 2 teams that ran the table throughout the year. These are the 2 teams that belong in the national championship game, right? If you didn't have a playoff, and that's why we have a playoff, because the 2 best teams meet in the national title, and that's what we're getting. I think is the 2 best teams, and I've slept on Michael Penix Jr. all year. You know it. I know it.
Yes, you have.
He was phenomenal in the playoff. I mean, in the semifinal, he was on that throw he made in between the 2 safeties for a touchdown. It was just, I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of quarterbacks, if there's another quarterback in the NCAA that can make that throw. Maybe Caleb Williams when he's on.
Maybe.
Michael Penix Jr. was in another world that night. He outplayed Quinn Ewers, and Quinn Ewers was the highest recruit ever in the ESPN 100 and in Rivals and all of this stuff. And Michael Penix Jr. is just the steady guy who found himself a little bit at Indiana, but he went through so many injuries. Nobody thought he would be this guy at Washington.
No.
And to be how good he is, he improved his draft stock the other night to me.
Oh yeah.
He went from maybe the 5th best quarterback in this draft, which is what Mel Kiper said he was, to maybe the 2nd best quarterback or 3rd best quarterback in this draft class. With the throws. I mean, the deep ball is so pure and so special. And obviously when you have Roma Dunze, who's going to be a top 5 pick, that makes it easy. And it was good to see Jalen Polk have a big game. Yeah, it was great to see Jalen Polk have a big game.
Did you like the Texas Tech mentions in the broadcast?
Yeah, loved it. You love to see it, man. Twice, 2 times, 3 times Texas Tech was mentioned.
At least 5 times. They mentioned Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Back-to-back 5,000-yard seasons or 4,000-yard seasons. They mentioned Jalen Polk transferring from Texas Tech, so there's 2 of them.
And shout out to Lufkin too. That's where Jalen Polk's from, Texas kid.
Jaworski Lane, shout out.
Yeah.
Also from Lufkin.
Yeah, like you said though, those are 2 of the best college football games we've been treated to really all year long.
Yeah.
It goes right up there with Oklahoma, Texas. I would say Oklahoma, Texas might have been the best regular season football game. With the way that Oklahoma went down and scored at the end of the game to win that after it looked like Texas had won the football game. Those 2 football games, best playoff games we've seen, no doubt about it. Especially in the same year. So that's fun. That's what the playoffs should be like, man. And I hope the 12-team playoff is somewhat like that. But there's going to be a Liberty team that gets in there, and look what happened to Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl on the same day.
Yeah,
it was exactly what we all thought was going to happen, right? I mean, the only team who that hasn't happened to is UCF and the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl that year against Auburn, and Auburn could have cared less to be there. For UCF, it was their national championship.
The Group of 5 has a respectable record on New Year's Six bowls. They said it. Was it maybe about 500?
Oh, I'm just remembering the last few where Memphis got boat raced in the Cotton Bowl that year. Of course, that was after Mike Norvell left, and those kids kind of their head coach leaves and goes to Florida State. And then Cincinnati got absolutely, just drubbed last year or 2 years ago, whenever it was. But yeah, I don't know that the 12-team playoff is going to give us great games in the first round, but the more you get down into it, the better the games are going to be. Unless there's like a 2019 LSU looming out there and nobody's going to touch them, or a 2022 Georgia. last
Are you
year
ready?
because Georgia was unbeatable.
Going back to 2014, Boise State beat Arizona 38-30 in the Fiesta Bowl.
I forget about Boise State being one of those teams.
Houston beat Florida State in the Peach Bowl 38-24.
Yeah.
Wisconsin beat Western Michigan 24-16. UCF beat Auburn. You just mentioned that one.
Yeah.
LSU beat UCF. That was Joe Burrow before he went on his run. And then Penn State beat Memphis. In 2020, Georgia beat Cincinnati in the Peach Bowl.
That one wasn't close.
That was before Cincinnati went to the playoff. That was a field goal win. And then in the playoff, Alabama crushed Cincinnati 27-6.
Yeah, and it wasn't even close.
So in the last 5 years, it's been rough for Power 5 teams, but it looked about 500 there.
Boise State helped with it, yeah. I mean, the greatest group of five, I would say the greatest group of five win ever was Boise State beating Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl that year.
Yeah, that was the 20-year reunion?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, yeah.
I think somebody said something about the proposal after the game, that it was like the 20 years since you had the proposal.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. It's been 20 years.
What's that guy's name? Landon?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Me neither.
I could not tell you off the top of my head, but it was a great moment. And obviously, that was the first time that a smaller, and they weren't called the group of five at that point, but that was the first time a smaller conference school had beaten a bigger conference school in a bowl game of that magnitude when the BCS era was going on. So still one of the best plays. Ian Johnson. Thank you, Alan Corbin.
Ian Johnson.
Yeah.
I was trying to say Johnson, but Landon
wasn't on the starting line chat line. Coming up big.
Roy says Happy New Year, Roy. Alan Corbin says Happy New Year, Alan. When is it too late to say Happy New Year? Is it the first time you see somebody in the new year, you get to say Happy New Year, and then you don't get to say it again?
And if I don't see someone until December of 2024, I'd say Happy New Year, right?
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of the BCS, I do believe if this was still in the BCS and you're just picking two teams, Washington, Michigan is the matchup.
Yeah.
Both undefeated, Pac-12 champion, Big Ten champion. Not that those are the two best leagues, but they got out unscathed. Alabama has a loss, non-conference, but still a loss. They might have put Alabama in there, but you look at the seeding. It's 1-2 coming down the pike, playing 1-2. I'm excited for it. I mean, I'll watch it. I'm not like uber excited for it. I don't really care for Michigan or Washington. I guess Washington is my pick to win because cheaters never prosper, huh?
I don't know. Michigan's been pretty prosperous.
Yeah. They have been pretty prosperous.
Yeah, they've been pretty prosperous this year. I think that it's two differing styles, obviously. You have a quarterback who your offense runs through Michael Penix Jr., and Michigan runs through Blake Corum. Their quarterback's a game manager. McCarthy, and that his last name. I'm getting that right?
AJ McCarthy. Yeah.
AJ McCarthy. Thank you. For a second I started blanking. I like Washington, man. They're so explosive on offense, and Michigan is not a passing offense. Washington has one of the worst pass defenses in the country this year against the pass. They're really not too terrible against the run. And Michigan is just not built to throw the football a whole lot. So I think that in Washington, Michigan's defense will be the best defense I think they've seen all year. Maybe not up front. Texas's front defensive line is the best defensive line in the country, I think. What I've seen all year, it's definitely better than Michigan's for me. But T'Vondre Sweat. Did you hear that story? I'm going off topic now. The story where they wanted to interview Sweat before the game, a couple days before the national semifinal, and instead of just bringing himself, he brought the whole 7 defensive line group in with him. And he said, "It ain't just me, boys. If you're going to talk to me, you're going to talk to every single one of us." And, that's true, because that Texas defensive line was deep and they were good. It might have been one of the better defensive lines that we've seen in college football of talent, stacked together in a very long time. I'm trying to think, maybe some of those Alabama defensive lines back when Nick Saban was winning the national titles in the BCS.
Yeah, Georgia 2 years ago.
Georgia 2 years ago. I think everybody on that defensive line got drafted. Yeah, but that Texas defensive line was legit, and Washington figured out ways. Michael Penix, he moved so well in the pocket the other night. I think that's what the pro scouts will look at more than his arm talent. They know his arm talent's there, but the movement in the pocket was some of the best I've seen in a very long time from a quarterback. Keeping his eyes downfield. I'm going to say Patrick Mahomes-esque because he's really good at keeping his eyes downfield, but Michael Penix moves better in a pocket than Patrick does to me with the way he quarterback-wise. Patrick's more of a free flower, move around in the pocket, swing it from all angles, but Penix finds a way to get to his spot where he needs to be. And I've never liked the left-handed quarterback, but I love this kid now. He's this now, Rob.
I was going to mention that earlier. The only thing pro scouts are looking at with Penix is that these left-handed receivers don't like that. But
right.
It works.
The Washington receivers like it.
Yeah, they do. They certainly do.
Robert Dunze is a dog. That dude can go and get anything. He'll catch it. You throw it up, he'll catch it.
Yeah, he is. And Jalen Polk, the catch off the deflection in the end zone was really good.
Big time play. Big time. Especially after they had muffed the punt and Texas had scored, and then you go back down and score on that play. That's a big play. And the muff punt was a huge play in the game, too, because Texas isn't in the ballgame late if you don't muff that punt.
Right.
So Washington really did try and give Texas the game from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then they played really good in the third quarter. That was really good in the third quarter, gave themselves breathing room. But, yeah, it was, I think Texas looked like the team that wasn't as wide-eyed by the big stage, just because of the games that they play in, who they are. They play at the University of Texas. You don't really get wide-eyed about a bunch of stuff.
Right. Especially not
Washington. Yeah. So kudos to Washington, though. Big game. And we haven't talked a ton about Alabama and Michigan, but Alabama, for a team that didn't look great, Jalen Milroe was benched early in the year at USF. They looked terrible against the USF team. Get beat by Texas. Texas looked 10 times better than Alabama. For Milroe to be the guy he was at the end of the year that he wasn't at the beginning of the year, that's a true testament to the Alabama coaching staff. But Michigan's on a mission, man. That loss last year to TCU in the playoff, I think, really affected this team.
When a lot of guys came back.
Yeah. And I don't think any of it has to do with Harbaugh being gone for the season. This team is just, they're old, they're experienced, they have the guys in the locker room. I think this is one of those teams where they could do everything pretty much you throw them out, kind of like right now, the lineup with a team full of, veteran players in the major leagues or in a college baseball team. You write out a lineup, let the dudes just play. That's how Michigan is. You write out a lineup, you give them a card, you let them play.
When Milroe was shook, there was a play either early in the third quarter or late in the second quarter where he slides with wide open space in front of him.
Yeah.
But it was the most awkward slide I've ever seen because he didn't want to get hit. And at that moment, I was like, oh, this kid's not ready for today. He's just not. He was not ready to be in that game to do everything it took to win. And then the bad snap on the last play to just run into your center's butt crack. The moment was too big for Jalen Milroe.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too big for McCarthy, who took the backwards pass, threw it down the field with his eyes closed. McCarthy is not a good quarterback.
No, he's a game manager.
But he is a game manager, and he doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes. So, good on him. Good on for Michigan. I will be rooting for Washington and the better quarterback play next week.
Yeah, it'll be a fun one in Houston for sure. And that's one of those things where that's why I say if Texas would have beat Washington, I think Texas wins because they're playing a home game basically.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be 70,000 people there, and 65 of them are going to be Texas fans.
Yeah.
I mean, Michigan will travel well. I think Washington fans will travel well. They're hungry. This is one of those times, those things where I think this is the last time Washington will be in a national championship scenario for a while, moving to the Big Ten, because you're going to have to compete with Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and all these schools, and also with Oregon and USC and UCLA, who Oregon is on the rise. And in Washington, they'll lose Michael Penix Jr. Obviously, they'll lose Roma Dunze. It'll be interesting to see what Jalen Polk does, if he goes or not. But I think this is Washington's time to get it done. If they're going to get it done, they got to get it done
now. One thing I did want to mention with the bowl games, we talked about Texas Tech's bowl game, so that's in the rear view. But
that's like a month ago.
Georgia, Florida State.
Yeah.
I don't care about the opt-outs. I don't care that you had the whole team quit. That is what would have happened in the playoff. You would have got boat raced. You were not as good as the rest of the playoff teams. You just simply weren't. Without, what was his name? Jordan Travis.
Yeah.
And furthermore, Mike Norvell, when he went full lame duck at the announcement, when they didn't get in, and he bowed his head and cried about it, and then the whole state of Florida cried about it for 2 weeks. That's what you get. That's bad coaching. It is bad coaching to not have your team in a position to play a football game that you are scheduled to play. And that's why they got beat by 63 by Georgia. Georgia wasn't pissed off that they didn't get in the playoff. Georgia didn't think they deserved to be there. Yes, they did.
Yeah,
just as much as Florida State. But they took care of business because they have a good coach and a good culture, and Florida State sucks.
Yeah.
I don't know how they went undefeated. No, I do know how they went undefeated. The ACC sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
Yeah, and, they beat LSU early in the year. That's their lone, feather in the cap for Florida State this year. They beat Clemson, which Clemson is not Clemson anymore.
LSU's defense was awful this year.
Yeah, LSU's defense is not good. And LSU, when they play in the ReliaQuest Bowl, what used to be the I don't remember. It's been a ton of names, but in Tampa, that's, and they won their bowl game, but barely, yeah. Florida State, yeah, it was embarrassing to watch, and I'm not a Florida State fan by any means, but for college football, that's embarrassing, right? For the sport of college football, that's embarrassing. Kirby Smart had some thoughts on it at the end of the game. And, he was right. Is this what you want? Is this what we want our game to be? Is whenever we don't get what we want. And he didn't say it like this, but this is how I took it for me. When we don't get what we want, which Florida State wanted to be in the playoffs, we're just going to tell our kids, hey, man, look, if you don't want to play, that's cool. This game doesn't mean anything. It's not that big of a deal. It's a big deal to Georgia, obviously.
Yeah.
It was a big deal to them. And obviously, Georgia's won a couple national championships. They feel pretty good about themselves already as it is. They know that they controlled their own destiny. They didn't get the job done when they had the opportunity to do it. They would have been the number one seed. They probably would be in the national championship game right now. Looking forward to next week if they would have just taken care of business. They didn't do that. Kirby Smart said so much after the ratings came out, after they lost the SEC tournament, after they lost the SEC championship game. He said, "You know what? We probably don't deserve to get in. We had it in front of us. We don't deserve it." They probably deserved it just as much as Texas did.
Yeah.
Texas, though, was a conference champion, and so that helped Texas. Georgia, maybe deserves it more than Alabama, who beat them in the SEC championship game. Because I think Georgia's still a really good top 4 football team. Them and those top 5 teams with Georgia at number 5 are very, very good football teams. I think there's a drop off between there and number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
Right.
But to just not show up, and again,
yeah,
I don't think you need sweeping national adjudication to fix it. You just need to go locally and say, Mike Norvell, you screwed up because you didn't care about this game and you didn't set a culture of trying to compete.
And what are you going to do? Tell the kids that they have to play in games now that they shouldn't be playing in? I mean, that's the thing is if the kid doesn't want to play in, play in the game, so what? You know, next guy up, you're Florida State. If you're this good football team, that's great. And Georgia had some opt-outs too. Let's not lie and say Georgia didn't have opt-outs.
Yeah.
They just didn't have as many as Florida State, but still, you know, how long has it been since Florida State's been in a big game like this, right? How long has it been since Florida State's been on this stage? It's been a long time for a blue blood like a Florida State, for a Florida State program ever since Jameis Winston left, right? They haven't been in this situation in years. So it just blows my mind how you just could go into a game and, I mean, they look like a dead fish out of, you know, before the game even started.
Yeah.
They could have cared less. And you knew that going into the game. So it just doesn't make sense to me why you would do that, first of all. As a head coach, you're right. As a head coach, it's on him. Getting your team prepared is on you, dude. And he sat there and sat in a corner. It's kind of like the water boy, you know, where the coach goes in at halftime of the Bourbon Bowl and he's sitting there with a towel over his head and just kind of slinking back and giving up. That was Mike Norvell the whole game against Georgia. I mean, they just got boat raced, and Georgia put it on them, and good for Georgia to keep putting it on them. 63 points wasn't enough to put on Florida State. They could have put up a lot more. Florida State was that was embarrassing for college football. It's embarrassing for Florida State. Mike Norvell should be embarrassed. You know, it just is what it is. But yeah, it was sad to watch. It was hard to watch because you knew that Georgia was going to just absolutely wear them out, and they absolutely wore them out.
Yeah.
And went how you thought it was going to go.
They are who we thought they were. They did not let them off the hook.
Yeah.
See, here's Grayson. Shout out Sark for giving us the best New Year's present. That just seems rent free to me. I'm sorry. It just seems rent free to be living so vicariously that your bowl season is made because another team loses. It's not me. And I get it, but they're gone. They can't hurt you anymore. They're in the SEC.
Yeah, I can take my Texas Tech hat off and legitimately say that Texas, Steve Sarkisian has done a phenomenal job at Texas. He's put a great roster together, both on the offensive side and the defensive side.
There's still a moment or two where I kind of question his play calling, but overall, I really like his offense.
Yeah, there, especially at the end, you can question some things, but in that moment, there's a lot of things that are happening, and you know how it is. We talk about it all the time whenever we look at Tech fans doing it during Tech games. You and I are texting back and forth like, you know, it is what it is at this point. Yeah. I'm related to a great armchair quarterback. But it's just Stark and company did everything they could, and Washington did try and give them the football game. But, you know, I thought they were really good in that fourth quarter just to stay in the football game. They got the drives down they needed to. They had Quinn Ewers was good down the stretch, and losing, you know, that injury at the end, but he came back in at the last play. I thought they really should have looked for they tied it now from Denton Ryan. I'm losing Sanders.
Yeah.
I really think you have to go to Sanders. You have to look at Worthy at least once, and I don't know that they threw it. I don't know that Worthy got targeted in those final 4 plays. Did he?
He got him down there, right?
He got him down there, but he didn't get targeted in the end zone on one of the 4 plays. I think you have to run rub route. You got to run, you know, mesh route, something in the middle to, and then Ja'Tavion Sanders, he's 6'6" and he weighs 255. He's a freak athlete. Just let the kid go up and make a play. He's going to be bigger than the linebacker that's on him. He's obviously going to be bigger than a safety or a corner that's trying to defend him. Just go to your big man. He made some big plays in that game. He's your all-time leading receiver, tied in school history, which he took over from a Lubbock kid that graduated from Friendship to David Thomas. And that is some big company to be in, because David Thomas had a fantastic career both at Texas and in the NFL. And Jatavian Sanders is going to have a great career too. But I just felt like at the end of the game, Sark went away from the guys. And Adonai Mitchell is a guy who obviously knows how to get it done in those big games. He had 2 catches for touchdowns, 1 in each season for Georgia the last couple of years. He's a Georgia transfer. It seemed like Sark kind of tried to be too cute at the end of the game right there, instead of just going with what was working, because what was working was really working for you. And they went away from your best receiver, who's worthy. Obviously, he's not a tall guy, so it's not really the fade thing. But I mean, the throw that Ewers made to Adonai Mitchell on the touchdown before Washington went back up and kicked the field goal before the onside kick. After Washington kicked the field goal to go up by 11, whatever it was.
9.
That throw, yeah, whatever it was.
Yeah, you're right.
9, because
it was 11, and then Texas kicked the field goal. They got the ball.
Right. Thank you. I'm not good at math.
Yeah.
I got 10 fingers. That's it. But that throw from Quinn Ewers to Adonai Mitchell was fantastic. And Mitchell was asking for it the play before that.
Yeah.
And he did it. And I think that should have been done earlier instead of on 4th down, obviously, because you're just putting the ball in 2 guys' hands at that point. Yeah. I think you have to go through reads on those. But it's easy for me to say because I'm not in the moment. I'm not in the New Orleans Superdome trying to call a play to win a playoff game and go to a national championship. So it is what it is. And there's a lot of Texas fans that were on Twitter saying the same things. But, Texas gave it a valiant effort and fell short. And good for Washington. Big game and what a story for Kalen DeBoer, coming from a small itty bitty Division III coaching job, and he ends up being in the national championship game here for Washington. So from Sioux Falls. So and he's got 2 other one of his D coordinators on that staff is a guy that played with him at Sioux Falls. So kudos to those guys, and they're going to have their hands full with Michigan, because Jim Harbaugh might be one of the better preparers of games that we've ever seen.
Sioux Falls. Looking at DeBoer's coaching career.
Yeah, he started at Sioux Falls, right?
Yeah.
That's where you got to start.
Yeah, Sioux Falls wide receivers coach. They went to Washington High School. Yeah. He goes back to Sioux Falls as the offensive coordinator for 4 or 5 years, head coach 4 or 5 years. And then he goes Southern Illinois OC, Eastern Michigan OC, Fresno State OC, Indiana OC for a single season where he meets Michael Penix in 2000.
Penix, yep.
And then Fresno State for 2 years as the head coach, and then Washington.
What a match there. Michael Penix meets Kalen DeBoer for 1 year. And now they're at Indiana. They both end up at Washington, and now they're both going to a national championship. That's a great story. And I'm sure they'll highlight that on the College Game Day at some point during the week. It's a great story, especially for Michael Penix, who went through so much at Indiana. He was really good that year at Indiana too. They beat Ohio State that year, I believe. His redshirt freshman year, I want to say it was. That was a really good Indiana team.
Yeah.
That they had that year, and then he tore his ACL 2 times, and it's so hard to come back from that. We've seen guys that can't come back from that, and now the dude's one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Great. I think the experience that he has, the years that he has under his belt are huge. Give him a big jump. He's seen a lot of defenses. He knows how to play the game of football. He's got great arm talent. I slept on Michael Penix all year, and he slapped me in the face a little bit on New Year's night because he was phenomenal, just phenomenal.
All right, we've got basketball to talk about. I say we do it Friday. I say we talk basketball Friday, make it a basketball show.
Yeah.
Get ready for the insurrection at the Capitol on Saturday. Insurrection 2.
Yeah, you wanna talk about Baylor opening up their new place last night?
Yeah, did you look, it's small.
Yeah.
There are high school gyms in the state of Texas that probably rival it, if not are
I've
bigger.
refereed in some high school gyms in the state of Texas that are bigger.
But let me say this. Good for Baylor. I think it's good for Baylor.
Yeah.
That thing's going to be loud finally and should be full. I don't know if it will be full, but it should be full against Big 12 teams. I would love to see the Texas Tech crowd at Waco now that it's 7,000 seats. But yeah, I think for such a good team to have that arena, I think it'll help their home court advantage. It's easy to laugh at. It's easy to laugh at because even when Baylor's number one in the country, they're not filling that. They're not filling up the Farrell Center. They weren't.
No, there's 7,500 people. That's it. Yeah, it's the most against Texas.
Now you're able to sell out, hopefully, and go for it, I guess.
Would we trade the USA for their net? What are we trading the USA to? Would be my question. Are we trading it to a smaller venue? Like,
trade their gym, national championship? Yeah. Oh yeah.
In a heartbeat. I'd trade the Natty for the Coliseum to come back, and we have to play in that for 20 more years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was a Mickey Mouse national championship from Baylor in 2020, but
yeah.
I would cut the USA in half to have a national championship on the board, especially during the Beard or Adams era.
You cut the USA in half, you're still at a bigger capacity than what Baylor's is.
Very close, yeah.
7,500.
Yeah, very close.
You're a little bit above where Baylor's at. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, the Farrell Center had its day. Yeah. The Farrell Center was a lot like the Coliseum. I mean, it really was exactly like the Coliseum.
Yeah.
They kept up with, they updated a little bit more. But
this new arena, it's new, state of the art.
Yeah.
It's going to be cool to go to. It looks really steep, so they're going to be down on top of you. The fans are.
Yeah.
Is it puny? Yes. Is it a center for ants? Yes, but I think it's good for Baylor.
And for a private school that doesn't have a massive, student population. Texas Tech has 50,000 students. Obviously, that's a lot bigger than Baylor. I don't know how many Baylor has off the top of my head, but the student population is a lot smaller. So that leaves your student section a lot smaller for what Baylor uses. And like you said, Baylor's their football stadium seats what, 50, 45, somewhere in there, maximum,
something like that. Yeah.
So it's smaller too. So you have to build your stadium to what your fan base is. Waco's not a massive town. It's not like College Station. College Station is a massive town, but it's also a massive university at Texas A&M. There's over 50,000 students. Baylor has 20,000 students. Thanks, Roy. A&M has a massive amount of students. Bryan College Station goes from a small town of about, I say small town, there's almost 100,000 people in it now, but it goes from that to there's 100,000 plus people in the stadium on a Saturday. Reed Arena is a nice arena at A&M, but it's not a private university, so.
Yeah.
But it's a nice arena. It's a nice arena. It's state of the art, like you said. It's got all the amenities you could ever want for bringing a recruit in to show him everything or her everything that you have. In today's arms race of college basketball, which we saw the arms race of college football, right? And it's still going on to some extent, but college basketball now is in an arms race. Texas Tech was one of the forerunners into the college basketball arms race, which was brilliant on the part of Dustin Womble and Texas Tech and Chris Beard, and kudos to Tech for being on the forefront of this and getting out front of it before a ton of other Big 12 schools have. And now, 75,000 students go to Texas A&M. That's insane. But for Baylor, this is good for Baylor. And I think for Scott Drew, for a guy that has been there for so long, this is something that he's wanted to happen for a long time. So kudos to Baylor. I'm sure I'll get to go to a game down there at some point. Look forward to it. I love new arenas. I love new things and nice shiny things. So, and if Baylor can stay good, then they'll have pretty good crowds. And like you said, like when Kansas visits, when Texas Tech visits, when Texas visits this year, I don't know if Texas does visit Baylor this year because the schedule's all wonky, but when TCU visits, I'm sure they'll fill it up. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be a good atmosphere, and it's a nice place. It really is. But I wouldn't trade the USA for it.
No.
Unless you're giving me a natty, then I'll trade the USA for pretty. You can play in a high school gym for 5 years. I don't care. I'll take the natty.
That would be interesting to see if you ever did renovate the USA or build a new one, where Texas Tech would play while you did it, because you don't have the Coliseum anymore.
Probably at the Rupert Griffin Center.
That would be interesting. That would be an expensive.
Or at one of the high schools, which the only high school around that fits, more than 1,000 people is probably Friendship in the Tiger Pit, somewhere like that.
Yeah, that would be.
You're talking 3,000 people there.
Yeah,
like TCU, when TCU is renovating their place, they were playing at Fort Worth ISD's arena, which sits about 4,000, I want to say.
Yeah.
I refereed a regional basketball tournament in there, but yeah. The TCU is about the same size as Baylor now.
Yeah. All right. That's all I have for today. We want to talk a lot of basketball coming up on Friday. Wrap up the non-conference, talk about the Texas Tech opening Big 12 play against Texas. But we'll do that on Friday. We'll get you back in your home studio there, Carson. We'll do it big.
Yeah, I'll be back in the home studio. It's a good thing we're ending now because my headphones are about to die. So.
Oh. All right. We'll see you Friday then.
Yeah, see you Friday. Peace.
Happy New Year.